Okay, good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to the sixth week of our club performance webinar series, and we're grateful to be joined tonight by Aaron Kernan, former Crossmaglen and Armagh senior footballer, over a 23-year career with Crossmaglen. Aaron had won 18 club championships, 8 Ulster championships, and 3 All-Ireland club titles, and over a 10-year period with Armagh. And All-Ireland Under-21 winner in 2004, and a 4-time Ulster Senior Championship winner with Armagh, and represented Ireland in the International Rules Series in 2008. So we're delighted to have Aaron on this evening to discuss the range of topics that we've covered in the previous 5 weeks. For anyone who hadn't logged in over the last number of weeks, the topics we had covered were nutrition and hydration, player and coach profiling, goal setting, exam preparation and time management, and last week we had our webinar on match preparation and recovery. So this evening we're going to have an informal chat with Aaron, get his experiences on the topics that we've covered over the past couple of weeks, and how those topics affected and helped Aaron achieve optimal performance, and especially over such a long career of 20 plus years. He was obviously doing a lot of stuff right away from the pitch to be able to maintain a high level of consistency when he was playing. So Aaron, thanks very much for agreeing to come on. We'll jump straight in here, Aaron. Suppose your family background, you probably had no issues in terms of being taken up to the field when you were a child and that sort of stuff, with your father and a strong club like Crossmaglen. At what age, Aaron, did you become aware of things outside of practicing your skills and doing your wee bit of running about and stuff, that you realised other factors were going to affect and help your performance?
Gareth, thanks very much for having me here. Delighted to be involved. So I suppose in terms of your outside influences, your conditioning, fitness levels, that sort of stuff, for me it probably started whenever I was maybe sort of 14, 15 years of age. Probably wasn't as prevalent back then as what it is now, but it certainly came along. You're talking in around 2000, where Crossmaglen at that stage, they had won 2 All-Irelands in 97, 99, and they were going for another one in 2000, and Dad was managing them. So you were seeing what was happening around the squad at that stage, but he felt he needed something different, a more professional approach, and it was the first time they took in a trainer just to do the physical work. It was the first time I ever seen anyone doing warm-ups, cool-downs. So from then you sort of started to the gauge, and I always tell just a story where there's a guy called John McCluskey who came in at that stage. He then went on to coach Armagh whenever they won the All-Ireland in 2000, and he's still involved with Antrim at inter-county senior level. But it was the first time I'd seen a bleep test being done. I think I was about 16 before the All-Ireland semi-final in 2000, and it ended up Oisin McConville and Tony and John McEntee, who were the last 3 boys going, and everyone else had dropped out. And I remember just seeing the sweat literally lashing off them, and nobody wanted to give in. And the 3 boys just kept going and going and going. And I remember walking away that night. You're young, you're in Crossmaglen, you're seeing them winning All-Irelands, you're benefits that come with it. But that was the first time it sunk home with me, okay, this is what it takes if you want to be a champion. If I want to go on and be a senior player and win All-Irelands in my own time whenever I get up there. So that was massive. It was just one night I'll just never forget it.
And what age were you then, Aaron? You said it was in around 2000?
Yeah, so I was about 16 at that stage.
16, okay.
Yeah. So you were starting now. Like I said, kids nowadays, they're obviously more educated in terms of content that they can get online. It's much more accessible now than what it was, and that covers your nutrition, your S&C, your speed work. Like there's top inter-county players at the minute who have their Instagram accounts, and you can link in with them in terms of getting tailor-made programs. So even from a very young age, that is available to kids nowadays.
Yeah, brilliant. You just mentioned nutrition and hydration there. So from the outside looking in at yourself, you always prided yourself on your physical, your physical attributes. Was nutrition and hydration something that you would have taken very seriously throughout your playing career?
It was, yeah. I suppose I had an unfair advantage in most people that I ended up, I married a dietitian. So that was that got me
You
out of
had to have
jail
it right.
fairly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was the first thing you go looking for if you want to be a good player, is find a dietitian. So to be fair, I was very lucky in that regard, but if an awful lot was pointed out to you, or an awful lot of guidance was provided. Even I can remember, like, from development squads way back at that stage, and the late John Morrison would have been taking Armagh development squads, and hydration, urine tests, even before training sessions back then, was something that he had that there was a focus on. So it was definitely, you're always looking for wee small gains in terms of helping you to both perform and recover. And as you're trying to make that step, whether it's at club level or whether it's at county level, you try and take as much on board as you can. And I suppose at county level, you maybe have a bit more time and you can afford to push a bit more. But in terms of with club, you don't want to overload and overpower players either. But at the same token, you need to get the correct information out to them, and hope that they absorb or ask questions, and start to work back from there.
Yeah. I remember, Aaron, it's quite a number of years ago now, I was in Holland Barton, the buttercream one day, and you're in it and you left with 3 bags full of stuff. And I always thought to myself, that's a man who takes his supplementation and his nutrition and his recovery and stuff of seriously, you know. I'm sure it was at a cost to yourself at a time maybe when a lot of other players weren't looking at that side of the game. And it was always something that struck me then, and obviously from seeing you play, it definitely came out in performance in that. In terms of injuries and stuff, I don't ever remember you having any serious injuries or stuff, or being out for a long period of time. Would you attribute that to how you would have prepared for games, and in likes that, being on top of your nutrition, hydration, being on top of your supplementation to aid recovery, being on top of potentially mobility and prehab stuff you would have done, or were you just lucky?
I tried to tick every single box that I could, and I'd love to say that it was all down to that, but I do put a degree of it just down to luck. Good genes, good genetics. I suppose I have a couple of brothers, and between the whole lot of them, they were crippled with one injury after another, between knee injuries, shoulder dislocation. So I had a tear in the Achilles at one stage, which just came. We were trying to do 3 All-Irelands in a row, and you were going back into the inter-county season. It was just non-stop for about 4 years, and the Achilles just give in. But other than that, no, very, very fortunate that I didn't pick up anything. But I would put a lot of it down to luck. Now, I'd say if I didn't mind myself, if I wasn't looking after my nutrition or doing the right strength and conditioning, or your recoveries, whether that was sea swims or yoga. I wasn't a big one for yoga. Sort of bored me. I'd rather someone flog me training than doing an hour-long yoga class. I just couldn't relax long enough. But what I started, even just small things, there's wee online yoga classes on YouTube that could be like 10 or 12 minutes or something out there, and I just found doing them a couple of times a week, particularly in my latter end, this past 4 or 5 years, I found that very beneficial. That it helped to keep me on the field as much as possible, which is ultimately what I needed.
Brilliant. And did you find at a stage, were you doing that from 16 or 17 years of age when you went into the cross senior panel, or was it something you just took on yourself because you knew if you wanted to get to the next level, you were going to have to do those extra bits?
It was just something that I took on myself. At county level, they did try to encourage it. It nearly was a bit compulsory at one stage. But like I said, I just found it very hard to do those 60 or 90-minute yoga classes. It just never, it didn't give me the same kick as it would if I had went to the gym or out in the field or something out there. But I did definitely see the benefits of it in the latter years, in terms of just maintaining that bit of flexibility and mobility, so that I wasn't getting soft tissue injuries.
Yeah, I suppose you were 40, 41 when you retired.
40, yeah, just
Yeah,
well, I was
40,
just a couple of
so
weeks short of 40, so that was just, I
yeah.
was 40 in December, and my last game was last November. So yeah, I like I said, I had huge guidance in everything that I was doing as well, and I just tried to take as much of it on board as what I could. And I tried to set as high a standards as I could myself, and hope that as many players as possible would follow suit.
When you look back at that sort of stuff now, would you have done anything different?
I probably would have enjoyed it a bit more, to be
Okay.
honest with you. I don't think I enjoyed it. I don't as much. I did enjoy it, but I probably should have enjoyed it a wee bit more. I think maybe sometimes I was a wee bit too serious about the whole thing.
Okay.
And to be fair to Dad, he would have always said, there was a time to switch off and enjoy it and enjoy the successes. But say in particular, like we're so fortunate to win the All Irelands, but I just went straight back in to play county football the following weekend every year. So you never really. Then that was it. To me, it was gone. That was last year, and now you were starting in something new. So if I could, I probably would have chilled out a wee bit more and enjoyed the success whenever it came.
Yeah, good stuff. Just in terms when you say there's sort of one season running into the next, did you ever take the opportunity, or did you ever sit down at the start of each year and set goals for yourself for where you wanted to get to with Armagh and also where you wanted to get to with Crossmaglen?
I did. I sat down and I reviewed every season in what I wanted to do for both club, county. You have team goals, but I found sometimes team goals, sure, management have their own goals and players, what's practical, what's not. I then started to try and focus on if I wanted a team goal, what can I bring to it? So I just made it very specific to myself, and that would be around Everton in terms of how I prepared. Then other times it would have been in terms of maybe engaging with more players, be more open with players, looking out for players, and like I said, trying to bring as many people with you as possible. So yeah, you're always trying to work on different things, but in terms of like specific goals for myself for a season or for games, I would have always had a notebook. I would have always monitored what I was doing in the gym, what I was doing. I would have been a stickler for like a weekly schedule in terms of if I was told to train, I knew right. Everton revolves around I have to train. Then that was it. If I had to go to gym, if I had to go to pitch, if I had to do recovery, do whatever, and then I would plan accordingly. So that was one thing I think I was very good at, planning my weeks and knowing what I had to do, when I had to do it, and trying to make sure that I fitted everything in.
Okay. And just back to the goal setting and stuff, Aaron. What did that look like more specifically for yourself? And as you said, and the whole thing around team goals, and every team at the start of the year wants to win a championship, but sometimes it's not realistic. But you made the point there about you had individual goals, and you sort of broke the team goal down as to what can you do to help the team reach that. So if you don't mind sharing, what would an individual goal for you have looked like, and then how would you have measured that?
Well, I suppose the big one for me then was if you ultimately want to achieve something, well, you need to have as many players in the field, learning, developing, creating a bond together. So my big one was being on the field, being at training, never missing training, not picking up my injuries. So that's the big one. I felt if I was on the field and I was training well, I was performing well, well, then that's the best way that you could contribute to a team squad or ultimately to a team goal. Then you can break that there down after that. Well, then how does that happen? And that's where then making sure I did all my S&C, then making sure I did my recovery, then making sure I was getting my sleep, I was getting my nutrition. So you nearly have subsections after them that they're easily monitored whenever you're planned and you're structured to what you have to do. Like ultimately your managers call the session, they facilitate your session, they give you the guidance in terms of this is the type of training we're going to do on the pitch, in the gym. But you then need to plan your week in terms of your work or your family life or whatever it is around that. So that's how I tried to do my goals. And then obviously as you're leading into a game, you should be training, you should be ticking all the boxes that you want to do, specific goals in a game. Obviously, I was an attacking halfback, but like just a simple one for me as an attacking half, I always keep my man scoreless. That was it. That was the biggest one that I had, giving away no scoreable frees, having 100% success rate with my passing, which is something that I really prided myself on. Getting 2 scores from play. I always had just small goals that you would go after in games, and then they're easy to sit and review. And again, so it's the same thing. If you're trying to get somewhere, how can you influence best? So again, that was me doing my job as a defender, but then trying to play it to my strengths whenever the game was actually on. So then I felt again that was the best way that you could contribute to ultimately hitting my goals and then hitting our team goals.
Brilliant. And in terms of your sort of self-evaluation or self-reflection process, then, you know, would you have been a big man for reviewing the game stats? Would you have spent much time reviewing the video in the coming days after the games and looked for specifics that you could have went after for the following game, or what approach did you take to that?
Yeah, I did. Particularly, it was a bit harder maybe at club level for sort of your league stuff, but championship, a lot of stuff now, particularly in the latter years, everything is recorded. The likes of Performer Sports and that we could have hooked in. So yeah, definitely, it was something that I would have went after, because my goals wouldn't have been that complicated. They were fairly simple and easy to note down straight away. And there would be small bits that you might look to improve on the next time around. Never really going too far away from that there. But in terms of then, yes, looking at a video on how I contributed to the team, or was there just different times where maybe I got too absorbed in doing my own thing and next thing I create a score off me. So what I'm trying to tell you is, say there were times where I maybe overcommitted, where I read a scenario where I thought I'm getting a 2-on-1 here and I don't get it, and next thing the ball's popped over my head and there's maybe a goal comes off the back of it, where you're too eager to do something. So I would have been very harsh on myself, or very honest on myself, because whenever you're looking at the man in the mirror, you can't really tell him too many lies. So that would definitely be something that I would try to have learned from, so that again you can better yourself, but in bettering yourself, you're still contributing in a better manner to the team goal.
Good stuff. I think it's refreshing to hear that your goals were simple. As a defender, it was keep your man scoreless, don't give away any scoreable frees. You know, because you know yourself with the modern game now and how social media works, and you see these fantastic stats on a Sunday on Twitter or whatever about all the possessions and this and that. You know, but I think the key thing is for any players listening in here is keep these goals really, really simple.
Yep.
You know, and something that you can measure and that you're able just to work on each week. You know, I think it's very, very refreshing to hear. Moving on, Aaron, then, just in terms to your like a pre-training or a pre-game routine, you know, was there anything that you found worked for you, and that you stuck by then?
Again, it would be for me. I always found match day, I just like to get to the ground, and in the minimum time, I just wanted to play that day. It was always everything that I did in the lead up to it that left me going out on match day confident. So if I was on the field on Tuesday and Thursday and I took part in the full training sessions, if I did my gym sessions, if I thought I got my recovery in, the game day then was the bit that I enjoyed the most. So for me personally, I suppose if there's coaches and that there here, you know, this is only me personally, I like to be there as little as I could pre-game, because I found I overthought stuff, or I get over anxious about stuff. If at all possible, like an hour was tops for me, just to be there, because like I said, maybe I took it too serious. Just the longer you left me sitting there, geez, there was times at county football, like you might have been at the ground nearly 2 hours before a game, but I'd just be pacing up and down and overthinking every scenario. I just wanted to play, and I was happy and content that I was ready to play, because I know how I had prepared the week in advance. So that was something, and again in my latter years, even with the club, that I always had asked our coaches just to have it down to the last minute, like that we don't need to be here for an hour and a half. Like, how long is your warm up going to be? I just tugged out. I was fortunate. I didn't have strapping, or I didn't really ever need physio, so I was changed in a minute. I didn't need to be there for an hour and a half. So that was definitely one that I felt the less I was there. If you've trained properly and you've been coached properly during the week, you don't need to be there for 2 hours or an hour and 45 before a game, because I felt, particularly this day and age, you just get boys maybe a wee bit more over anxious. So that was definitely something I enjoyed in the latter years. Less was more for me on game day.
Justin, you're saying there that you maybe overthought things and you played every scenario in your head. Did you have anything did you ever delve into the whole visualization, or what sort of mental preparation would you have turned to, if any?
Visualization was huge. It was something that we would have, we had a few different people who would have had an input with us early on. And I suppose I give you a couple of good insights into this. Is I can remember as playing in an under 12 championship, and we hadn't lost the whole season, and we were going to win this county final, and it was under 12, like, and we ended up giving away a goal with about 10 minutes to go, went behind, and I can clearly remember freaking out, just absolutely losing my mind, couldn't believe this was happening, arguing with my brothers, arguing with my teammates, and ultimately we lost the game. And I remember, again, you remember your 12-year-old at home crying the whole evening, couldn't be consoled, it was the end of the world, and Dad just said to me, never let your opponent know how you really feel. So just, if that ever happens again, take a deep breath and just compose yourself. And literally for the rest of my life, anytime we give away a big score, I just take a second to myself and just look around me and say, right, how do we get this next ball, and try and get up the field and get a score. So that was a very valuable lesson as a 12-year-old. And then whenever I broke into the Armagh team, Dad had brought in a guy called Billy Dixon. He was like a performance coach probably back then, but he was massive into body language, how you carried yourself, how you walked, and same thing, never showing that you were tired. And I really took on board him. So he was always head up, chest out. And even if I, in particular, something I would have tried to do, if I was running up the field and I had got a score, I would sprint straight back to my own position, and I could be absolutely exhausted, but I'd stand beside my man and I'd have a real slow breath, and as if there was nothing wrong with me. But psychologically, you're trying to get at him. He's going, Jesus Christ, this man can't be stopped. And my lungs would be on fire, but you just would never let your opponent know how you really feel. So stuff like that there. Billy was big into that, how you walked around. Never slumping over, always portraying yourself in, I suppose, the biggest frame that you possibly can. So we small things like that, they always just stuck with me, and I found they're always very beneficial.
Yeah, good stuff. Yes, so look, again, is it another huge area now in the GA as a whole, is the use of sports psychology, and and at what level does sports psychology become prevalent? But small things like that, a club manager under 12 can take on board, and a really good takeaway is that you don't need somebody to come in from the outside in, and there's small things like that you can, I suppose, you can influence your players from an early age. That is how they carry themselves, and that's what they're about. And I suppose it feeds into potentially the culture that Cross McLean created for 20 years, and it's still ongoing to now, I suppose. In terms of you've talked there about I suppose how you carried yourself and the mental aspect in the pitch. In terms of concentration and focus and that sort of stuff, was that something that you would have worked on, or is it something you had to work on within game to stay in the moment? Or
I probably, because I was so into it, an awful lot of it wasn't an issue. Early on, particularly I'm speaking of my senior intercounty career, there probably were times where you would allow yourself to drift into different situations where you wouldn't be spatially aware in terms of who else can I help. So your goal was don't give away any scores to your man, but it didn't take me too long then to start to realize, okay, well, he's no danger, but then who else can I help? And I think that's something that you see an awful lot at the minute. And even in the top inter-county teams, there's actually quite few where you see an awful lot of players would rather stand and mark their own man and give away a score somewhere else. Where to me, I quickly learned, you are in a team sport here, so give away that point if it means I've stopped the goal. So that was definitely something that I felt I really improved on, after my first few years, where you're able to read different scenarios and not be selfish in your own team goals, but try and help those around you. And I think it is definitely something that is massive, that can be improved on. And I'm talking the top level even, let alone a club at the moment. The players leave you're a man out of the way and go and help somebody else. It's a big area that you see so many players just standing facing their own man now, and someone might run past them 5 yards away, and they haven't that ability to realise, well, that's actually the danger, not this man.
Yeah, and it's probably something us as coaches can get into our youth players. Yes, you're given a job, and your job is go out and tag number 15, but tag number 15 when there's danger,
Yeah.
and as you said, and when to be aware to spot the danger and react to it and stuff. I heard, I think it was one of the podcasts I heard you chatting about recently, and I thought about it when we chatted around this briefly. In terms of resilience, and I suppose you would have been a player who wouldn't have never been starting on teams. You always would have played. And I think it was towards the latter end of your Armagh career, you weren't just getting on all the time, and then you got your chance. And again, you finished you retired on your own bat in Croke Park and that sort of stuff, I think, if I'm right.
Yeah.
How was that for you that year? Because you probably had to dig deep. You had to show character, you had to show resilience, and it was probably a new challenge for you. How did you deal with that?
I found it very difficult. Just couldn't get into the team at all. That was my 11th season with Armagh, and couldn't get in. But same thing. I probably went into myself in terms of traveling back and forward to the games. There was a lot of cross boys in the panel that year, and I genuinely found it tough. There's no point in me saying, "Oh, sure, everything's smooth." I found it tough, so I just traveled the training by myself for that season, because I was finding it hard myself, and I didn't want to be negative around the other boys, because all the boys actually were getting on and all were playing well. So I removed myself from them. But as soon as I went through the gates of training, I give absolutely everything I could to make sure that the management had to play me the next day. And it went on and on and on. And I took a bit of fortune at the end of it. Well, fortune for me and misfortune. One of the boys actually got hurt the week of our second last game, and that's how I get in to start. But it was, once I got the training, it still was all about the team. Like, while I was disappointed, I still tried to always put the emphasis on what's best for the team here. I went after every situation that I could to put as much pressure as I could on management to make sure that they did play me. And then ultimately, whenever I did get that lucky break, I was able to take it. I played well in my last 2 games with Armagh. And you said then you went out on your own bat. Happy that you were able to show that you had the ability to play and still perform at that level. But it is difficult. The big one for me was sticking it out. And the one thing I see sometimes now, players will walk away. And I was of the belief then, and I still always am, if you start, you finish. You can't walk away midstream, because it's a team sport. We're not playing golf or tennis. So as much as it can be hurtful for you at that time, you always have to remember what's best for the team, and sticking it out. And that's what I tried to do that year. Some people might have been trying to encourage me or think that the best thing to do is walk away, but there's not a chance. If you start the season out, you make sure you finish it. I do be disappointed whenever I see or hear of boys dropping off panels mid-season, because I feel you're letting your teammates down. I understand the frustration, but it's something that I think management definitely, they need to try and create that environment. But then also players have to take responsibility themselves. You have to think what's best for the group, not just me. And sometimes you have to stick it out. But you always have to do what's best for the greater good.
Good stuff. So the key message really to a player, Aaron, who's maybe is going through a tough time, who's maybe getting sub week on week and maybe losing the place and getting back in and out of the team, is to get the head down and work harder.
Exactly. It is not easy at all. Like I said, I just drove the training every night by myself to give myself that bit of headspace. But once I got there, I just went after every situation like I could, whether it was an in-house game or whether it was fitness. Like I made sure that my fitness wasn't an issue. I made sure that I was hitting all my numbers, whether I was in the gym or whether I was conditioning stuff. Every single night then I just continuously stayed working on my skills. I made sure that there was no box that I wasn't ticking, so that as soon as I got that sniff of an opportunity, I was going to take it.
You just mentioned there the working on your skills and stuff and hitting your numbers in the gym, and that probably is the most important part of a Gaelic footballer, is developing their skills and executing their skills, and the time that they spend on the pitch with their team and the time they spend on the pitch on their own. And all these other things are just small percentages. Your match preparation, the sports psychology side of things, they're all the small percentages that will help to achieve optimum performance. But just give sort of what it would have looked like for you in terms of how often and how long you would have spent on skill development and your gym work and your conditioning and stuff.
Again, I'll go back to Dad. The best bit of advice that he gave me as a child, and it stuck with me, was do the simple things well. That's all he kept saying to me, was do the simple things well. And for me, that wasn't fist passing the ball 5 meters in front of you or 5 meters behind you. It was fisting it straight to your chest. If I'm passing it, I'm popping it to your outside where you're able to run onto it. Just the real simple things is what I tried to do all along. And then obviously you evolve in terms of trying to get bigger and stronger. That was something that, like I said, it was laid on, particularly whenever you're involved in county early on. But now it's just a norm with club. Like every club has an S&C program, has a fitness program. So for me, I just always took on board and put my complete trust in the management, but also in the S&C. So if they told me this is what you need to be doing in the gym, I went after it. If they told me this is the numbers I need to be hitting on the field, I went after it. And then in the latter years, where at even the club level, you're using the likes of your stat sports, your GPS fest and that they're giving you targets again to hit. And to hit those targets, they don't guarantee that you're going to end up in the best player of the field or whatever, but you'll not be too far away from it, because you'll be putting yourself in enough situations to get on the ball to make things happen. So for me, one just made sense to me. One interlinks with the other. But the skill stuff was the one that was massive for me. It was having your head up, doing the simple things well, doing the basics well all along, and not trying to overcomplicate things. And I always found that by doing them, particularly in the biggest games under the most pressure, that I was able to deliver then and not be phased, because it was just a norm of something that I always had focused on.
Stuff. There was a question come in from somebody who had registered to ask what a Cross Midland training session looked like. And just when you're saying there about it was nailing the basics, I asked Jamie McCune, who was your physical trainer, as I read a couple of years ago now, about a Cross Midland training session, and he says, look, you're more welcome down and watch, but all you're going to see is a load of lads doing everything at 100 miles an hour, trying to make it perfect. And I said, give me a wee bit of detail. And he said, a man on the sideline, a man in the middle, and a man on the follow on the other sideline, kick and follow at 100 miles an hour. And he said that's I'm sure it was a lot more complex than that at times, but he said a lot of it was nailing the basics and getting them done at top speed.
So that whenever the pressure come on in a championship game, it was the norm for you. And Tony McEntee, Shamey was right. Shamey was in with us for the last 3 All-Irelands we won with, and the last 2 in particular with Tony McEntee and Garrett O'Neill. And Tony McEntee's thing was, our game plan was that simple, it confused everybody. And that was literally it. They spent so much time working on players being able to kick off both feet, getting their head up, missing a lane. So that sounds simple, but if you're a half-back, it takes the midfielder to come showing to me to create space, but it also then the half-forward, he's in sync. So he knows, well, I'll run into the number 11 position and I'll double back out into the number 10. And all I'm doing is I'm not hitting him, I'm just hitting space. Yeah. And then he's doing the same with the full forward lane. So, yeah, it looked simple, but it was repetition.
Yeah, it takes a lot of confidence and trust in your own skill set and your teammates, because you're you kick a ball up the lane and number 10's not there, you're the one that gets the blame on it. Yeah. Aaron, that's brilliant. Look, I'll open it up here for any questions, just in case anyone there has any questions before we wrap up. So feel free just to raise your hand, or if you want to put it in the chat box, or I can unmute you and let you come in and ask.
Don't all jump at once now.
Yeah. So it's always the way, isn't it? What was your pre-match meal?
I really enjoyed this past for 5-6 years. Overnight oats was the breakfast. Overnight oats or pancakes with a bit of fruit. And then pre-match meal was just your usual sort of boring enough chicken and pasta, or chicken and rice, bit of broccoli, stuff like that. But again, still can't cook. Everything was laid on to me, but that was that was just try to keep it simple, and just put the right food and fuel into me. Again, even club football, Jesus, was always just excited and look forward to games. So it was never one for eating a huge amount, like bit of fruit, bit of maybe a banana and a few jelly babies or something like that in change rooms. But yeah, that was pretty much it.
You weren't these Donegal boys going for their 99 ice creams after these games, no?
No, why did that?
Good stuff. Look, Aaron, just before we wrap up, if there was one thing you could give to players that are on the call, or to coaches that they can feed back to their players, in terms of trying to get to the top level, what would it be?
I suppose the big one for me is been organized, been realistic, and then been hungry to go after those. The one thing I was always very, very capable of doing was just being honest with myself. I knew if I played well, I knew I played well, and I knew why I played well. But I never lied to myself. I didn't give myself the opportunity to lie to myself. So if you do really want something, if you're a social footballer, be a social footballer, but then don't yap and cry, to others, or talking to someone that's saying, "Oh, I should be doing this." That if you're not doing it, you're not going to get we ultimately go. But if you really wanted something, like I said, be organized about it, be hungry, and go after it. And the big one is that you cannot lie to yourself. Just be accountable to yourself throughout. And I think if you do that, whether that's sport or any walk of life, you'll be fine. You'll get by.
Yeah, good stuff. Look, there's a couple more questions in here, Aaron, just if you don't mind.
No problem.
What's one thing you learned from playing intercounty football that you'll take into your role as a coaching officer within Cross to keep tradition of successful teams in Cross?
I suppose the big one for us at the moment is where times are different. Times have definitely changed, and we're still bringing through good footballers, intercounty standard quality footballers. I think a bit of hunger and a wee bit of resilience whenever pressure is coming on is something that we have dipped a bit in terms of, like you're talking about, trying to achieve the ultimate. But that's absolutely what we will be trying to do within the club. I loved and appreciated and proud of everything that I was so fortunate to be part of. And I feel that it's now my turn to try and go back and give whatever I can to help this next generation achieve the same success, but also the level of pride that comes with representing your club and county and being successful. So I suppose the short version of that is absolute appreciation of the good fortune that I had, and going back now to try and do everything I can to make sure that the next group of young kids come through and do the same thing, and then they can leave the same legacy maybe for my kids and that there to follow afterwards, because that's ultimately what's the best thing about the GAA.
Brilliant, and I'm sure it'd be brilliant, Aaron, for the players and coaches like to look up to someone like yourself within the club. Another one here for you. Any ideas of generating or maintaining that level of intensity in training? And talking here as an underage coach.
So I have gone, for anyone who maybe not aware, I've gone back straight into coach at under 10s within ourselves here. And to be honest with you, because obviously I've just played, I've never coached. So I tried to phone around as many different people, different coaches, different sports to get an insight. And small side condition games is the big one that everyone really is going after at the moment. And it's something that we're trying to implement with ourselves now. I'm talking about under 10s, but we're trying to drip feed the development of where it just gets a wee stage harder, more complicated as they go through the levels 12, 14, 16. So small sided games and having specific points of what we're looking for in that. So if I'm designing, say if we had under 10 training on Monday night past there, we would break it down into 4 small condition games, but there's a specific thing that I'm putting into the coaching group that one coach is looking after for that. So say for instance it is 2 end zones and a condition game in the middle, but the end zone you're just looking to get a foot pass in as if they're taking a mark. So what you're trying to do is just encourage kids to get their head up, and instead of always just passing to the man who's nearest to you, is looking to go that bit further and trust themselves in terms of taking on the foot pass and someone getting ahead of the ball. So it's something that you're trying to then bring into a game. So yeah, looking at small sided games, and the big one for me is what suits your club. Because too many people have the same whenever the All Blacks, everyone was trying to copy the All Blacks and using all their quotes and their mantras. It's what works for Byrne, what works for Calvin Gales, what works for Guido, what's your tradition and history in your club, and then design your training and your coaching around that, because it has to make the people in your community tick. It can't be this is what Dublin's doing or Kerry's doing, because that just mightn't be relevant to you. So it's looking in depth in terms of what's your core principles within your own club and what's your traditions, and then going after it.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and listen, at that age, it's probably trying to keep it simple. Keep it fun and put the majority of the focus on nailing the basics. And as underage coaches, and with yourself, Aaron, and Beckham with the under 10.5 girls, we try these small sided games, and then the skill breaks down, and we get frustrated with it then at times. And it's probably just trying to, as you take that deep breath in and get the game going again, and over time then hopefully that the skill execution improves, that allows the game to continue in the way we want to continue.
Yeah.
Look, Aaron, we'll not hold you any longer. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for your time. I think it's been a very, very good way to end off our club performance webinar series. 10 the expertise of yourself in at the end to talk all things, I suppose, performance and lifestyle. Hopefully the people on the call have taken a couple of takeaway messages that they can implement into their own coaching practice, or as a player that they can integrate into till they're playing their playing career. This will be put out on Ulster.gaa YouTube in the next week or two. Hopefully we'll get a link up and stuff, so it will be shared, and feel free to share it among the other coaches in your club. So from Ulster.gaa, Aaron, thank you very much for giving your time this evening. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you, Garrett.